Hey everyone, good morning. It's Justin. It's about 6 in the morning. We're about to get started. Today I wanted to work out with a basketball and just kind of work on my agility. Once again, work on my balance and stability as well as a little bit of footwork. It's just tough out there doing the coronavirus quarantine because, I'm sure we're all feeling it, but we, can't get out into the parks or play outside. So I'm just doing the best that I can, playing with what I got. And, hopefully everyone is safe and gets better, and then we can hopefully go back outside and play. But for now, I'm just going to keep it to the garage and do what I can. So have fun. See you later. Let's see what we do.
Welcome back to the second episode of Under the Microscope. I am your host, Justin Chuck, and today we will be reviewing my last week's goals and looking at my week's exercise routine, as well as seeing where I need to make adjustments, things that I want to focus on, and moving forward in my training. So, as you can tell, I kind of started off with a similar warm-up routine of the jump ropes, doing a lot of the double leg, single leg, side to sides, and then today I just decided to play around and kind of just do a little bit of basketball, hand-eye coordination and handling drills. It's early in the morning, so I wasn't able to do a lot of pounding on the floor, so I just kind of improvised and went with a lot of ball handling. So I kind of noticed that, I have a lot more stiffness when I go into my left side under my left leg. It's something that I want to take note of and maybe investigate further, as well as pay attention to and figure out how I can make improvements for that, because I can tell when I'm playing it's a little bit of an issue. So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit later. It helps me to see multiple movements and multiple positions so that I can make sure that I'm covering every possible weakness as I'm doing all of my different training exercises. Once again, I kind of come through the same glute exercises. I really like to make sure that I just kind of hit all the different movements, my extensions, abductions, squats, external rotations, lunges. I really just want to make sure that I have a really diverse training program to make sure that my body's prepared for any movement that I might encounter when I'm playing. I had the pleasure of working with my buddy Frederick KB. He came over early on Sunday and just kind of went through some new stuff. Today he kind of brought over a new addition, a club, and some cool new mobility drills. So today we'll just kind of be going through a little bit of a stretch session, and like always, we're going to have an emphasis on stretching in all three planes of motion, working on dynamic as well as static mobility. For me, I like to hit through multiple positions. It's important for me to really take my time. I have to have a stretch through my half kneels, the kneeling positions. I like to work through the standing position. But for me, it's really important to work on all sorts of movements. I really like to do little gentle rocking back and forth. I also like to do sustained holds. I also like to kind of move slow, as well as gently increase my speed as I start to warm up. And if I need help, I will definitely bring along a stick. This is something I, got at Home Depot. You can get it super cheap for like $10. You can get two 6-inch or 6-foot sticks, and it's for perfect use in the home. And I love to use it because it helps me to stretch and increase my mobility, and give me a little bit of a cue, so that when I am stretching, I can give myself a little bit more of a feedback, as well as give myself a little bit of extra isometric resistance as I'm doing the stretches. And if I need to, it can give me a little bit of extra stability and balance. Some of my favorite movements to do, especially with a stick, are to make sure that I just kind of hit all 3 planes of motion, as well as kind of allowing myself to feel a little bit more balanced, as why I work on just general weight shifts, as well as end range stretches, because it's important, I believe, to have full use of your range of motion, right? You want to be able to use everything that you've got available to you. So I believe that that's how you maximize your potential. So it's important for you to really find out and understand kind of like where are your limitations in each and every single movement and position, to really hammer away at your weaknesses and turn them into strengths. I try to work from the ground up to check to see how my movements feel in each of the positions. Now we're kind of taking a look at Frederick, and he's showing me some new stuff with his club that I brought over. He's also kind of introducing me to some new ideas for shoulder stability, and adding in, a little bit of an extra rotation reach, which I thought was kind of nice. We're going to be seeing me do a lot more of that throughout this week. I'm really appreciative that I was able to spend some time with Frederick even during this time. I know that we're not supposed to be close to each other, but really appreciate that he was able to kind of stop on by and we were able to train together. He brought over his mace, and one of the cool things about the mace is that it's got an uneven weight distribution, so it allows you to get some non-traditional strengthening, and it provides some great feedback and shoulder stability as well as core strengthening, that I'm really looking forward to using and implementing once I get mine in the mail. So thank you, Frederick, for stopping on by, and I hope you're doing well.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Monday morning. It's like about 6 a.m. I don't know if you can tell, but it is raining outside, so it's a perfect time to kind of work out because it's going to be dry in here. So today I am going to be focusing on some more mobility. I had the pleasure of working out with my friend Frederick. He showed me some great stuff in terms of improving my mobility, and that was definitely on my top priority for this week. So that's what we're going to start with. All right, see ya. Have fun.
So once again, we are working on a lot of the same stuff. I like to start from the ground up. One of my favorite positions is the half kneeling hip flexor. I'll do a lot of different kind of movements here, but I always usually kind of go through the same ones, because it's always good to kind of check in with all the different movements that we have available to us. So I'll always hit the front to back movements, some side to sides through my hips, do a little rotations, little circles, and then I'll add in some hand reaches. I'll start off kind of small at first, just kind of moving my hips, and then as I get more loose and flexible, I'll start to add in my arms and really try and lengthen my body out as I go through some of these movements. I also like to kind of practice some segmental movements here. If you can kind of see, I'm working through some spinal flexion to extension through this pigeon pose. I'm also kind of working on using blocks or a kettlebell to help with getting some elongation or some stretching in through my thoracic spine and my rib cage. I definitely believe in using supports or assistance to help improve your mobility. I really like using the stick that I got. It helps me to get more engagement through my muscles, as well as to help kind of put them where I believe they should be. So one of the issues that I have, especially in this 90-90 position, is kind of a lack of core strength or lack of thoracic spine mobility. So one of the issues that I have is that I kind of like slump down and I can't really extend my spine and sit upright in this 99 position. So what I'm using this stick for is really just trying to get my arms over my head as much as I can, trying to get as much right side bend or just good thoracic spine bend on both sides. I'm using the stick any way I can to kind of just help give myself a little bit of an extra reach throughout all of these stretches. Over the years, I've been reluctant to fully understand just how important having a mobility program or a flexibility program to your training is, because I was always the smaller guy and always felt like I needed to be stronger or bigger, but then I kept trying to do some of these simple movements and stretches and started to realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm all out of sorts. I can't even stretch or touch my toes or do some of these things. And now I've realized that you're only as strong as your weakest link. You can be as strong as you can be, but if you can't even move in your own body, by the time you're 60, what's the point? So we've only got one body. I've already had a couple of different surgeries, and I've had to deal with that frustration of having to pick up the pieces and kind of rebuild from scratch. So at this point, my goals for my health and longevity in my body is to maintain everything that I've got and get stronger, right? So I want to maintain and gain strength. So through my recovery process, I've realized just how important mobility has become. So I've definitely learned that it's important to develop mobility in all of the different positions. You need to be able to have movement, not just in your large muscles, but all the way down to your toes, right? So, it's really important to be able to, kind of have control and flexibility and movement all the way down to your toes, your ankles, your knees, your hips, your, all the way through your spine, your neck, your arms, your wrists. So every movement is important, right? So, it's really important to do flossing exercises for your nerves, all the way down to your tip of your toes, all the way to the tip of your fingers. So I definitely have become a big fan of doing mobility work every day, at the bare minimum, because if you don't, you move it, you lose it. So at the bare minimum, it's important that I work on my stretching and my mobility, because I know that if I, stay still or don't, it's just going to get tighter and tighter. So I would much rather continue to work on it and get better at my movements than to let them get worse. So at this point, I have really fully invested in kind of maintaining a mobility program. I focus on gaining as much mobility in the areas that are the tightest. And so definitely for me, working on my adductors and my groin mobility is important to me, mostly because when I move through those movements, I can tell it's just very stiff. I can't move very fast. I feel like an old man kind of transitioning in and out of movements. So to me, that's kind of just how I know. It doesn't feel like that for a lot of my other movements. So it's just something that I've realized that I need to spend more time on doing some of these stretches. And I know they're definitely not the things that I have done in my past. And just because they're foreign to me or different or, new to me doesn't mean that I shouldn't be able to learn them soon. So I've been doing my best to practice. So it's really important to me that I spend a lot of time working through this wide 4-point adductor groin mobility, as well as thoracic spine mobility, because I am very tight. I've realized, this is a very difficult position for me. My hips are really tight, and so I really can't even open up my hips nearly as much. And I'm doing a lot of these cat-cow segmental movements here, because I can tell my back is really stiff. Just even trying to go into that hip extension, my hips are really tight. It's tight in my hip sockets, trying to open up into hip external rotation, and I can feel a little bit of tightness in my mid-back too. So this is all just very stiff, and especially with that other adductor adductor mobility with the thoracic spine, going into that rotation reach and opening up, I feel a lot of stretch in my shoulders and my arms and in my chest. So I definitely feel like, there's a lot of places that you can have deficits, even though you may have really good range of motion here. It's always good to check in this other position because you never know where you might have movement issues. And it's always good to just kind of make sure you've got all your bases covered. So once again, it's important to just kind of take a look and see how it feels. For me, a lot of my stretching routine is kind of based off of certain strategies and principles, but for the most part, I kind of like to stick to the general, I want to cover all my different movements and the different positions. I want to do all the different glides and flossing exercises to make sure that my joints are nice and opened up. And depending on how stiff they are, I will spend more time on those areas that need more work. And if they're feeling okay, I'll kind of just run through them. I'll feel like, all right, that feels good, and I'll move on to the next area. And I'll make sure, to kind of cover each of the different movements and planes of motion. And as long as it feels good, I'm happy with it, and I'm ready to kind of move on and go on to my next set of movements. Because to me, a lot of this mobility work is just kind of like a check or a self-assessment. It's a way for me to check in with myself, see how I'm moving, where do I feel tight, where do I feel stiff. So as you can kind of tell, I have my hand under my shirt, and that's because I have a lot of stiffness here under my left rib cage and through the left side of my internal obliques and my latissimus dorsi as well as my quadratus lumborum. So a lot of these muscles feel really stiff in terms of letting me to open up and to left rotation. It also makes it stiff for me to bring my left arm up and over into side bend. So what do? I grab my stick for the assist, and I take my my body into that position that feels limited, right? And I basically use the stick to provide a little bit of extra tensioning, and I make sure to hit all the different planes of motion. So I go into side bend, I'll do little rotations, I'll do front to backs, but basically I'm trying to make sure that I'm addressing all of the areas that feel like they need work. So I make sure that I cover all of my different movements and all the different positions, and I spend time addressing those issues that come up. And if I do this on a daily basis, I find that my body is much more in tune with how I'm feeling. So I definitely have an idea of what I need to work on and what I need to focus on moving forward. And it just gives me a general idea of like, hey, maybe I'm not feeling so good in these certain things, so maybe I won't do a certain activity or exercise. So it allows me a lot of freedom to kind of choose the exercises that I want to do, as well as stay safe and injury free. So I think that this is a good way to kind of stay on top of your health as well as your movement status, so that you can make sure that you're always staying healthy. All right, so next up, I bring it onto the kettlebell. So after I've loosened up and did all of my mobility with the stick, I take it to the standing position, and I use this kettlebell to take myself into the wide stance, get into a big toed out goblet squat position, and I'm just doing little weight shifts, just kind of feeling how it feels throughout my body. So for me, I've always had issues on my left side of my leg. I've had multiple ankle sprains on my left leg. I've had left meniscus surgery. And so I just know that over time I have not had a lot of confidence, and I have not put a lot of extra weight or pressure. And over time, I haven't had as much ability to bend or put weight into that left leg. So overall, it feels stiffer to me. And I can just tell when I do these movements, it just takes longer to do. So when I do this little knee extension and shift my weight, I have a little bit more of a stiffer feel to it when I go on the left side. The right side's faster, the left side's stiff. So what I like to do are these little hamstring flossing exercises. I'll take a little kettlebell or a weight. You can use whatever. Not something incredibly heavily. I just choose something that is comfortable for me to hold for a period of time. So I like to work on endurance and just trying to do as many of these little flossing activities that I can over maybe about a minute, 2 minutes, or maybe 10 to 15 to 20 repetitions. So this is another exercise that I will be using from now on. Kettlebell overhead squat with rotation. Frederick brought this one to my attention, and I think it is great because this is definitely something that I can bring into my program that will help me to work on my overhead shoulder press strength, which is something that I want to get better at for my Olympic lifting skills. And this is also going to help me with my shoulder stability. And it's not only going to help me with my shoulder stability, but it's also going to help me with my dynamic stability and mobility. So it's going to help me with multiple things, learning to have core strength, learning to have a solid foundation throughout my squatting position, so that I can perform this movement. Now, one of the issues that I have is that I get a lot of knee valgus as I reach across. Now, one of my knees kind of dives in really far, and that puts a lot of extra stress. So that puts a lot of tension on my knees as I'm doing that. So especially on my right, and then when I do it on my left, I feel a lot of additional tension. So even though I'm able to do this movement, I can feel that this is something that I may want to pay attention to. I may not want to push this one really far because I can tell as I do it, it does put a lot of my joints that I have had issues with in the past kind of at risk. So I am comfortable doing this as long as my pain levels are below a 3. I don't have any pain, but I can just tell that maybe this is just a difficult movement.
All right, everyone. So turns out today's workout was a success. I really got a chance to work on my groin and adductor flexibility, and I definitely worked on my hamstrings and also kind of just working on my end range squat and a little bit of my overhead press and shoulder burst stability. So I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. Man, it was tough, but it really felt good. I definitely think that today made a huge difference. I definitely think that moving forward, I really want to spend more time really addressing my weaknesses, because I think, everyone likes to focus on working on their strengths because they feel better, they feel like they're getting stronger. But when you really work on your weaknesses, I like it because you really feel it. When you finish a workout, you're like, oh my God, I felt everything, everything that was going on in my muscles, and I really feel like whatever I just did opened up a whole new world for me. So I definitely think that's what I'm going to focus on this week. I don't want to, just get back into my old habits of kind of strengthening the same stuff that I like to strengthen because, that makes me feel comfortable and it's convenient. So I'm really going to try and dig deep this week and double down on my weaknesses. That's what's going to be my focus this week. So stay tuned, stay fit, and do the best that you can. See ya.
All right, so today I decided to do a little bit of clean practice and keep it light and easy. I do the same kind of warm-up that I usually do. I will do my double leg, single leg, and my side steps with the jumping rope. I like to do my glute theraband exercises. I change it up, do a little bit of my jumping split squats. I'll do my squats, external rotations. I'll do my hip extensions, my abductions, And then I decided to do a little bit of some dynamic kind of lateral split jumps. And then I kind of go into my clean practice. Ideally, I wish I could have warmed up a little bit more for my shoulders and kind of practice the movement with a bar or with a stick. But I kind of woke up late and knew I didn't have a whole lot of time to kind of get this movement in, so I kind of did what I could. I noticed that when I have a wider grip, it really helps me to get through this movement a lot better. So as I kind of woke up, I was like, oh wait, there we go. My wider grip is what is going to help me be successful. So you can kind of tell with the wider grip, I just have a little bit more stability, a little bit more control. All right, so for today, I decided to do a kettlebell workout. Wanted to work on my shoulder strengthening, some end range mobility. I'm going to keep the weights light and easy. So I started off with some single arm kettlebell swings, which moved into some kettlebell cleans. And then I went into some clean and then press. I really enjoy working with kettlebells now. I find them to be extremely useful. I really like the handle. It allows you to have a little bit more freedom with your lift, and you can kind of modify it however you need to. And because of the handle, you can also kind of do other kinds of lifts with different positions and holds. So it just makes it a little bit more versatile in terms of your piece of equipment. So I really find like with just one piece of equipment, I can do a lot of different things with the kettlebell. And so one of my favorite things is to just kind of go through a little mini circuit. I'll do a few different exercises with a couple of different movements, and I'll just kind of run through them, doing about 10 repetitions each, and just doing as many as I can, and until I get tired or feel like I need to stop. But I like it because it's lightweight, it's relatively manageable, and it's something that I feel like I can do for a long period of time without getting too tired. It's also a really good tool to use to challenge yourself with one arm versus the other, or one leg versus the other. It really allows you to kind of see where your weaknesses might be. So I'm using it here to figure out how I feel between my two sides as I do this Cossack squat. So I'm having a little bit of difficulty getting into my end range, and so after this I kind of use the stick to improve my flexibility and my range of motion while keeping my arms high. So staying in shoulder flexion is not, it's not going to allow me to go deeper into the squat, but I will be able to get more flexibility and improvement in my thoracic spine mobility, which will help me in the long run for my Cossack squats. And then what I also did was I took a little break and I did some goblet squats, and I had an emphasis on doing weight shifts. So I was in a wide sumo squat doing weight shifts towards the left and the right side. And then I know that I have some issues on my left lower extremity, especially in my left ankle. I've had multiple lateral ankle sprains. I've had a left meniscus surgery. And so I just know that I have some issues in terms of my ground reaction forces and loading into the ankle through the ground, through my knee and through my hips. So I am putting more weight along my inner shin, which is just going to help put more center of mass near the midfoot of my foot, as well as helping me to get better end range of motion. So I do those little joint mobility exercises, and they really help me to improve my end range mobility. So I now decide to use the kettlebell to hold my squatch a little bit longer. So this is one more thing that I'll do to kind of improve my overall Cossack squat ability. So I just kind of add some different types of exercises to help me to be able to improve that transition and that loading response into the frontal plane. So, I'll do a lot of dynamic frontal plane transitions. I'll use controlled flossing or weight shift exercises. One of the things that I'll do is I'll adjust the tempo. So I'll go slow, I'll try and go a little bit faster. And then I'll use multiple type of movements. So I'll use some front to backs, I'll do some circles, I'll move from side to side. And it's really important to me that, I prove all of the different types of movements within the type of movement. So, it's important that I improve, sagittal plane transitions, as well as my frontal plane transitions. The more, practice that my body gets moving through complex multi-joint movements, the better it'll be. So the next one here I'm doing is another dynamic frontal plane transition. I've just made it a little bit more difficult. So instead of holding the weight lower to the ground, I hold the weight overhead and add in an arm reach just to make it a little bit more challenging. Now, I conclude my kettlebell exercise with some more motor learning. So this is where I get a chance to just do some really light weights, use the stick for some balance and stability. And I am just working through my hip flexor stretch. So I am just working through this hip flexor stretch position, and I am doing some arm drives and challenging my thoracic spine in all three planes of motion. So I do a lot of up and down, I'll do a lot of side to sides, and I'll do a lot of rotations. And I'm not trying to stay extremely rigid and still. I am trying to let my body move as much as it feels comfortable to move. I'm welcoming weight shifts and weight transfers and a little bit of movement in all my joints, because I know that all of my joints need to be working together in order to successfully help me achieve good balance, where I have good ability to kind of return and stay on my feet and not fall over. I really enjoy doing these complex tasks with high repetitions because they are really difficult things to do. They require, full body movements, and it challenges the nervous system, and it requires a lot of balance and strength and coordination and control. So to me, I think it's really important to do these types of complex movements, instead of isolated strengthening exercises where you, individually strengthen one muscle. I think it's more important to spend more time on coordination exercises that are going to be helping you to develop better coordination and ability to manipulate and move multiple body parts and be able to dissociate between your upper body as well as your lower body, because it's these skills that are going to help you to translate to improved function and hopefully lead to less injuries in the future. Now, it's really important that we do these coordination exercises because I believe that they are large movements, big movements, nice and open. These are the type of movements that are stressed for people who have like Parkinson's disease, right? So, they need large, complex, big, open movements. And that's basically what we're working on here. So, this is definitely something that I, encourage because, hopefully, if we continue to practice these large open movements, it will really challenge our brain and our bodies to, develop this mastery and control in multiple positions. So for me, this is something that I want to be doing for the rest of my life. I want to continue to develop these skills, these movements, and hopefully turn them into something more. And once I, do these more and learn to unlock more movements, I really hope to be able to explore different movements and be able to do them with more control and maybe even add a little bit more freestyle and creativity to it. So I look forward to improving my mobility as well as my movement with the help of this stretching stick. So I highly recommend going to Home Depot, getting one of these little towel rods. It's really cheap. You can get them for like $10 at Home Depot for 12 feet, and you can saw it off and have two perfectly usable sticks. So I really enjoy using these sticks because they have greatly improved my mobility. Plus they make it more fun and interactive to do some of these stretches. I've taken a lot of inspiration from Shaolin and Kung Fu and martial arts, and so I don't have any formal experience doing any of this stuff, but when I do these movements and play with the stick and help work on my stretching, I kind of feel like I'm doing some cool stuff and I know what I'm doing, and it also makes me feel like I'm connecting back to my roots. I'm really glad that I started to use them. They really help with my range of motion and my mobility and my stability and my balance. I definitely realize that this is something that I need to continue on a daily basis. I think that this is something that should just be incorporated into my everyday routine for me to kind of maintain this type of mobility and expand it even further. I've realized over the years that having strength is important. That's why, it's important to do Olympic lifting and gain that foundational strength. But I've also realized that you need to have mastery of your movements as well. So you need to be able to have, a lot of different movements under your belt, and you need to have them mastered and controlled. So I think of it as the person who is a mixed martial artist, and they spent their time learning all of the different crafts, right? You spend all your time learning about boxing and taekwondo and karate and kung fu and muay thai and kickboxing, and then you spend some time working on your wrestling and your judo and your takedown defense, as well as your submission as for jiu-jitsu. I don't think that I would choose one particular aspect of fighting and just focus on that solely. I don't think that makes sense, right? If you want to compete, I think it's better to be well-rounded. Maybe some of us might have natural talents and strengths and can use them to our advantage, but for someone like me, I am a hard worker, and so I would much rather spend more time putting in hard work and mastering as many skills and mastering as many movements and becoming as well-rounded and skilled as I possibly can, so that I am a more complete athlete. So it's really important to me that I continue to work on this mobility routine, because I know that it will help me in my future in terms of maintaining my range of motion as well as expanding upon it from here. So I've really enjoyed working with kettlebells recently because it's really allowed me to see kind of the difference between my strength and control between my sides. So I definitely know that it's a lot harder on my left side, with my shoulder presses and shoulder stability. Also with my squats, I can't squat as deep on my left side, and so it's just different than doing fixed strengthening exercises where you're using like an exercise machine and it's not moving. Where I'm out in the open space and I'm the one who's holding the weight in a different position, and it's not just being held by two hands. It really throws your center of mass off and your center of balance. And so I really like working with the kettlebells because there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of different things that I can do to train. I can work on holding it in different positions and using it to do different kinds of holds and exercises, and just kind of giving myself a lot of variety. So it's kind of nice. It's one piece of equipment, and there are so many things that I can do with it. I can work with it for just a couple of reps, or I can work with it for a long time. And that's the kind of the beauty of it, is that, you know, I can just do it anytime, any place, anywhere. And you know, I think that's kind of what I like about it, is that now that we're home, you can just kind of pick it up and do it at any time. And I think that's kind of what my exercise program has started to turn into. It's become more about working out every day, just a little bit here and there. I can work out for as little as 15 minutes, or I can work out for as long as an hour and a half. But really what it's about is showing up every day. You know, the thing that I, you know, spend the most time on is my mobility. So I work on my mobility every day, because I know that a lot of the patients that I work with, that's the number one thing that they talk about, is that, you know, they don't have as much range of motion. Their body is stiff. They can't get in and out of the car comfortably, or they can't tie their shoes. And not only that, but they have issues with like functional movements, right? So, you know, they have issues getting in and out of the car, or out of the tub, or off of the floor. They have a hard time picking up their grandkids. So to me, it doesn't make sense to do, you know, fixed, isolated strengthening exercises where you're just working on one muscle. You know, that's why I've really changed my, you know, exercise programming over the years to incorporate a lot more, you know, functional training. And that's the hot word now, is functional training, right? So to me, you know, it's got to make sense. It has to have a purpose. It has to have a reason for why you're doing your exercises. But at this point, you know, I want to develop a body that is trained in all different movements and coordination and exercises. If I have a potential injury or a weak spot, I want to know about it. So to me, it's more important for me to develop a body with a mastery of movements in all positions, and I want to know about all of the different weaknesses that I might have, so that I can prepare for them and I can train to make them stronger. So to me, it's all about addressing my weaknesses. My exercise planning revolves around finding what my weaknesses are and making them stronger. So to me, it's always about finding and exploring new movements and figuring out what where I might be vulnerable, and figuring out ways for me to train them safely and effectively. So this concludes today's episode of Under the Microscope. I am your host, Justin Chuck, brought to you by AIM Physical Therapy. I hope you enjoy my journey towards health and improving my athletic abilities, and I hope this inspires you to want to do more and to get out there and find out what you're made of. Have a good day.